Hey everyone, Duke Nougat 3D here with another mask to show off in my collection, and today I have for you a piece that I don't normally go for. I don't normally focus towards British masks, they're not my area of interest or research, but this one was very cheap and anything World War I interests me in general, so I had to pick it up for the price that it went for. So today I have for you this British small box respirator first model. And again, do forgive me if information fails me. Any British experts there can correct me if I make any mistakes. British masks are not my area of expertise. But anyways, getting on to the history that I've researched, by the middle of 1915, it was realized that the PH and PHG helmets that the British Army was using as their standard respirator at the current moment were becoming ineffective against new types of chemical agents that the Germans had introduced. Developed around the late summer of 1915, Colonel Edward Harrison and Dr. Bertram Lambert developed the Large Box Respirator, which was aptly named because it used a gigantic fucking canister rather than a cloth hood impregnated with chemicals, and the canister would have been filled with bits of charcoal and soda lime and so on and so forth. And this canister was so named because it was massive. It was literally about like this wide, maybe by this tall. I could be wrong on that. I don't know the exact figures, but the name is very indicative of its size. And it used a long corrugated rubber hose, which led to a angle tube assembly, which is just a straight, slightly curved piece of pipe to which a flutter valve and a wire cage guard was affixed. And then the mask itself was a sort of half mask made out of between 30 to 40 layers of muslin fabric that's impregnated with a chemical composition that would have been impregnating the PH and PHG helmets had they continued to further their development. And then inside was the standard PH hood-style rubber-coated metal mouthpiece that you would bite down on to breathe through, and a nose clip to plug off the nose so that the inhalation would only transpire through the mouth itself. And then a set of Spicer or sponge rubber tear gas goggles would be issued separately with this mask to protect the eyes, as it was not a full face piece mask. Issue of the Large Box Respirator began in early, let's say around February of 1916, and was very limited issue to officers, artillerymen, so on and so forth, because not many were produced. I don't know the exact figures of Large Box Respirators produced. I actually did look it up, but I've forgotten it now, and I have not written notes on it, so they did not produce very many. By August of 1916, the Large Box Respirator was reduced in size. They made the face piece out of a rubberized fabric that covered the whole face, and it integrated the goggles into the face piece. And they had also modified and simplified the angle tube assembly to which the canister would or the hose would attach to the face piece, and also reduced the canister in size, resulting in the small box respirator, which again was introduced around August of 1916 and was fully issued to all units of the British military throughout, beginning around spring of 1917. The small box respirator is perhaps the most famous gas mask issued of the First World War. It served the British military well into the 1920s, when it began to get replaced with the General Service Respirator Mark II and III masks, and then the U.S. military, when they had entered the war in August 1917, they did not, or excuse me, April of 1917, I could be getting that entirely wrong, did not have any gas masks to issue, and while they were developing their own, most of the AEF were issued the British small box respirator. This particular example I have, as you can see, is in a bit of a state. It was actually in worse condition when I originally got it. It was completely balled up, crumpled, and it would not open, and a soak in hot water allowed me to open up the face piece very carefully at the sacrifice of having the angle tube detach from the face piece. It was the fabric, the rubberized fabric is very thin, and it's basically like wet paper at that point, so at the sacrifice of having the angle tube assembly come off, I have gotten the face piece fully opened, and I'll get into that in just a moment. So the reason why this is a first model is because the angle tube assembly, as you can see here, has this wide guard bracket around where the flutter valve obviously would be. And the British eventually got rid of this pretty quickly for a number of reasons, ranging from the the flutter guard was kind of cumbersome and kind of bulky and awkward to manage, and then also the fact that they were wanting to save on metal, and they figured that this was not really a needed accessory for the mask, and so they did away with the design. And there is a rumor that states that a majority of the British small box respirators that got sent to the Americans had this flutter valve guard intact, and so that is why almost every single American design that came from that point onwards had a flutter valve guard of some sort, excepting the training masks, which did not for some peculiar reason. That's really all I have to say about the history. Again, forgive me if I have anything wrong. Let's get on to the individual components of the kit here. Starting off with the canister, which I must say is, I'm a bit amazed that it stayed intact. As you can see, it's got several holes where the filtering ingredients are showing through, but usually when these masks are found, these canisters are completely rusted out and broken in half, whereas this one is relatively intact, and you can even see the original lacquered metal finish, which has begun to discolor as they typically do, but yes, these canisters were made out of a lacquered metal. There were several different canisters that were issued with the small box respirator. I believe the early ones were painted black, and then later on they came out with the type NC canister, which I believe was this type. I could be wrong. Some sources say that they were painted brown, and then there was also the green band canister to protect against additional arsine smokes, and then again, I'm kind of speaking out of my ass. I don't really know too much about the development of the British canisters. However, this is the most common you will see with the BSBR. And I do know that a lot of American-issued BSBRs, if they were still serviceable and the filters were depleted, they would replace the canisters with a Type H or a Type J canister that is made in the US. So that's if you see a BSBR with a yellow or a green canister, that's almost indicative of it being American-issued. Anyhow, you can see the bottom here. I've removed the inlet where you could see the wire mesh and metal skeleton holding in the charcoal and soda lime. The inlet valve is over here. You can see a little cotter pin, which would retain the flutter valve, which is or the inlet valve disc, which is very interesting. I've never really seen that done before. And then I have a little scrap of the inlet valve here, which you can see is made out of orange rubber. And I have like a cup containing all the little bits that fell off of this thing. And then here is a scrap of the flutter valve, which usually they're orange. They're made of that same orange rubber, but this one is black for whatever reason. It could have been orange. It could have just discolored, but I'm not sure. But as you can see, there is a bit of a scrap of the flutter valve there. And you can also see the bit of lacquer that was retaining it on. I don't think they used wire at all on these. They just used tape or lacquer or something. I'm not entirely sure, but it is what it is. And then over here, you can see the remnants of the mouthpiece, which is completely broken in half and crushed to nothing. But yes, there is the mouthpiece fully present, and it is much different from the American mouthpieces, as you can see, because it is completely round and it is not a sort of pill lozenge sort of shape. And then it only has, well, the American one has 2 corrugations as well, but as you can see, that's how it is. And as you can see, the mouthpiece is completely bent out of its shit, so that's not too much to say about that. And like the American angle tubes, the British ones are threaded. I have tried to unthread this corrugated portion here where the mouthpiece would attach, but it is very, very stuck, and I do not want to try and coax this off any further at the risk of damaging the metal. And as you can see, the hose is rock solid and broken in several places. However, it is fully present. The hose is made by Dunlop Rubber Company. I don't know too much about the production of these hoses, if they were made by any other companies. I know the US hoses, they were made by a shit ton of different rubber companies, but the British ones almost always seem to be made by Dunlop. And the hose is made out of an orange rubber, as you can see. And then now onto the face piece, which I'm sure you're all dying to see. So as you can see, mine is a size 4, and as you can see, the angle tube is completely torn free of the face piece. As I mentioned before, it was completely crumpled up, just completely balled up, and would not open. So what I did was I soaked it in almost boiling water, just very hot water, and that got the rubber pliable enough for me to flex the face piece open at the expense again of creating a few extra holes in the face piece. But you know what, it's presentable now, and I don't mind. I could still easily get around $200 off of this mask, and I only paid $75 for it. That's the amazing thing. And when I got it, it was just, you know, a mere fraction of what these masks typically run for, given their rarity. And you can see the eyepieces here. which are interesting because they are secured to the mask with twine. They are not pressed in at all. From what I can tell, they are literally just held in place by this little band of twine or little ribbon there. And you can see more of that lacquered finish that would have been on the metal, but is beginning to wear off and discolor where it is present. You can see the stamp for a size 4 face piece on over the nose clip. And you can see the harness is completely, well, except for the top cotton webbing strap, the non-elasticated strap, all the elastic webbing here, as you can see, it basically disintegrated on touch. This stuff is very fragile, and even if I did leave it intact, I would not be able to get it on a display head. So that was a bit unfortunate, but you know, it is what it is. I'm leaving it all present. You can see the copious amounts of rubber cement they placed around the seams of the face piece, and I will carefully show off the interior of the mask as much as I can. You can see the interior is very, very poor, as much as the rest of this mask is. There is a little number 17 on the nose clip, and you can see the gauze padded nose clips, whereas the American ones will use rubber pads. And you can see the crimping of these celluloid eyepieces throughout the inside, and the eyepieces are actually very clear, a little bit discolored, but they are not punctured. They are fully visible through, and that is quite interesting. And this face piece, this whole set I will probably be reselling just to get extra money. I don't know when, but I will give you guys a heads up, and you know, shoot me some offers if you're interested in it. But it is probably either going to another collector friend of mine just to get some extra money, but I'm not entirely sure yet. I haven't made him any offers, and I haven't discussed it with him, so that's about it, really. And it goes without saying that I am missing the carrier and the anti-dimming composition that would have been with this mask. I'm missing a lot with this, but it's all there, and it's a very nice example of a, well, not a very nice example, I guess I could say, but it's just an example, I should say, of the early first model British small box respirators. And again, forgive me. Oh, one last thing to mention. Little safety pin here. It came with a safety pin attached to the top strap, and this safety pin would be used to adjust the length of the top strap by cinching up the material and then pinning it down. So, and again, that's all I needed to say on this. If you have any comments, questions, corrections, or concerns, drop them in the comments below as always. And I'm Duke Nukem 3D, and I'll see you all later.